Welcome to the Scott Holman podcast, emergency podcast. Dana Holgorsen no longer being head football coach of the University of Houston edition. Something that I think we talked a lot. We talked almost a gratuitous amount last episode, and I say it's my fault for doing so, about things we were thankful for. And guys, I get to give a lot of things in my personal life that I am more thankful for than something related to the University of Houston, and it's now former football coach. But in terms of things in the University of Houston sphere in my life, I don't think there's anything I'm more grateful for in the recent history than Dana Holgorsen being relieved of his duties as of this morning. We're recording this on the afternoon of Sunday, November 26th. Now, former head coach Dana Holgorsen officially let go, as usual, by media report, and then University of Houston officially confirming with Chris Pesman being the one on the statement. So that's the basic facts as we know them. Dustin, my friend and co-host, how are you feeling now that we are in a post-Dana Holgorsen Cougar football world?
Man, I'm excited. I'm excited to be talking about UH looking for a new head football coach. I'm excited because as we are recording this, we are all second screening watching the
we are
volleyball NCAA selection show and waiting to
Let's
find
go,
out.
ladies.
Expect at some point during this episode that we will suddenly get excited and devolve and talk about go off topic and talk about volleyball for 5 minutes, and then probably get back on topic to Dana getting fired and the search for the new coach. But no, I'm excited. Like I said, it's kind of this beautiful moment where it's exciting and scary at the same time, because your next guy could be anybody, right? I literally have heard 10 names already in a few hours, and I'm like, yeah, I feel like there's a non-zero chance we could hire that guy, right? So it's just, there's so many options out there, so many guys to consider. But I mean, more than anything, I think we were all ready for anything new, and but for better or for worse, this means we're getting anything new next season. So that alone, I think, is worth being excited about.
Bobby, how you feeling, bud?
Good, man. I'm good. It's been a crazy weekend. Just when you work in retail, this has been kind of a crazy weekend. So
weekend after Thanksgiving is a big retail weekend. You learn new things every day.
Yeah, a little tired, but sometimes you get news and it just puts a little wind in your sails, and you can get going a little bit more. Dustin, you said it perfectly there. Like, for better or worse, or good or bad, like anything could happen. And it just reminded me of the classic Family Guy moment when he's like, it could be anything. It could be a boat. Like
the mystery box.
The mystery box. It's a mystery box. It's a new coach. It could be anything. It could be Dana Holgorsen.
I swear I thought of that exact same example, and I was like, there's no way it's a terrible example, because the best thing in the mystery box was that you could hope that it was going to be the same thing you already had. So I mean, to be clear, that is not the situation we're in. I like the analogy. I thought of the same thing.
Be Major Applewhite. Shit.
God, I hope not. That would be it'd be very funny for about 5 seconds that we went full circle there, and then also extremely unfunny when I think about what Major actually did his 2 years as head coach here. So yeah, kind of said the facts as they are. Dana Holgorsen, following Saturday's 27-13 loss to UCF to end the season 4-8, was dismissed as of this morning. I think it was around like 10:30, I think Central Time. I'm kind of doing the math there. I think just a move that had to happen, a move that this was never going to be a fan base that would get back on side with Dana Holgorsen. I think that's the reason why it had to be done. I mean, are there theoretically possible things that Dana Holgorsen could have done to make his seat less warm, to have retained his job into the coming year? Absolutely, man. A certain spot goes a certain way in an October game against the Longhorns. As bad as this last month has looked, if this is a 5-7 finish where one of those wins is over that school, wouldn't have been surprised if he had been kept on here as head coach. And I'm not gonna say I would have loved that decision, but it would have been somewhat defensible. But this was a program that showed no progress from week 1 to week last. If anything, it was negative progress, because you beat a UTSA team in week 1 that turned out to be pretty solid. Obviously, they didn't look like themselves the first month of the season, but you don't have to retcon that. That was a pretty good win. Didn't see much else that you could describe as pretty good the rest of the season. Your first loss to Rice in 13 years. And in Big 12 play, having 6 of the 9 games being decided by double digits. Obviously, your 2 wins were decided by single digits, the Hail Mary win over West Virginia and the overtime win at Baylor. And I think, to hand it off to you guys, I think that's why we're talking about a different head coach right now. I think the expectations were modest this first season. Believe me, all the propaganda out of Cullen Boulevard going into the season was keep your expectations modest. Don't expect a team that's going to seriously contend for Big 12 hardware. I don't think any of us did, but I don't think it's easy to talk yourself into there really being any kind of progress made here. And I think that's why we're talking about different football coach. Not to mention, I think a coach who just consistently failed to say the right things anytime he was in front of a microphone. Like, you can like someone's candor to some degree. I do like the candor we got from Dana Holgorsen in the last 5 years, but when the candor is, I've stopped recruiting the current high school senior class, you don't really appreciate that candor. So I guess I'll open it to you guys. What do you think is the biggest reason why we're here now talking about a coaching change in the Houston Cougar football program?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is the results in the field, but literally the first bullet point I have in my notes is just, it wasn't one thing, it was everything. And you kind of touched on it there. It was the results in the field. It was the fact that we're 5 years in and there's not really, I mean, I guess maybe UTSA away, but like, there's not really just kind of like a hallmark win you can really hang your hat on. There's not a win over a good power conference team that you can go, okay, yeah. And, you know, it's, Houston has been up and down over the years. Houston will probably continue to be up and down in the future, but just to never really get that win that you go, okay, yeah, you know, if we beat the like you said, Sam, if we beat the Longhorns this year, you've got one, right? You can say, okay, you know, we've got a win to hang our hats on. But it was, you know, on the field, you just weren't beating good teams, and you were, you know, seeing an increasing trend. Well, the best thing you could say about Dana through his first 3+ seasons was that he beat every bad team in front of him, essentially. We just never really saw this team lose to bad teams. It was kind of that maddening and consistent, you know, okay, well, we can't beat a good team, but at least we don't lose to bad teams. But now we're losing to bad teams too. You're having all of the, you know, downside of being a boom and bust team without any of the boom, without any of the the excitement of it. So I mean, I think the results in the field is it's a, you know, it's a results business. So certainly that's number one. But I think it's the fact that the recruiting disaster that we're seeing is happening right now, where, like you said, the giving up on the class, the currently being in the, you know, 100s of the recruiting rankings, you know, only 8 commitments, the being ranked behind every single P5 team and a bunch of group of 5 teams. Like, and like you said, it's the being completely antagonistic towards the fan base. It's the refusal to take any responsibility for anything, though, whatever you want to call it. But just the absolute, you know, refusal to like take anything seemingly seriously, to just like the lack of urgency, right? You know, that we saw in game multiple times. We saw it most recently against UCF, but, you know, down 3 scores and just kind of like strolling downfield and just like, yeah, we'll get there eventually. And just, yeah, if it takes 7 minutes to march down the field, that's fine. You know, never mind, there's 1 quarter left and we're down 3 scores, whatever. And just the kind of the casualness with which he talks about the recruiting, the, like I said, the everything being someone else's fault. Oh, we're gonna have to talk to my assistants about that. Oh, well, the players have to do better. You know, Dr. Couture talks time and time again about wanting to see the fire in people's bellies, right? Dana Holgorsen has no fire in his belly whatsoever, right? He didn't have it towards anything other than maybe getting the team up for 1 or 2 games this year. He doesn't have it for recruiting. He doesn't have it for challenging himself with new ideas and new coaches. He doesn't have it with feeling like, you know, he needs to take making the fan base excited to see Cougar football seriously. He's just like, I'm here and everyone should be happy that I'm here and should just be happy with anything that I do and should just, you know, not criticize anything I do. And it's like I said, it's not one thing, it's everything. But at the end of the day, you sure come back to the wins and losses, which have been not impressive enough and too numerous, respectively.
Yeah, for me, you know, if you don't have the 101st ranked recruiting class going into this year, if you're a top 40 recruiting class, you can point to that, right? You go, you know what, this team's returning some guys. They got, you know, I mean, who knows? But if Holgorsen stays, you assume that Donovan Smith stays. You got a good young receiving core. You got a good young running back in Parker Jenkins. You got a lot of stuff there. But and maybe you can justify keeping him here another year for that. And then, you know, you got this class coming in and maybe you can justify it in those ways, you know, if your recruiting's better. If you're recruiting at a top 40 level, it's hard to get rid of you, right? If you are the number 40 class, number 37, number 38, and look, I understand it's hard to recruit, right? Top 40 is asking a lot, even if you're top 50, right? I'd like to see us in top 40 with our location and some of that stuff. But, you know, if you're top 40, we're probably not moving on from Dana Holgorsen. I mean, You go, the on-field performance isn't there, but look at this recruiting class. We got a hell of a recruiting class coming in. Why don't we keep them, see how this recruiting class looks, get these guys in here on a visit, or get these guys in here on campus, have them fall in love with the city. Jack Freeman talked about that, right? When he's a Dallas kid, but when he moved to Houston, Houston's home to him now, right? Get some guys on campus on that class. But what's the worst that could happen by letting him go now? Your recruiting class falls apart. There's 8 guys, right? Like, okay, we lose them. We didn't have much of a class anyways. Are we going to perform worse on the field? Can't really, right? But I think if you're exactly where we are now, but you have a better recruiting class, I think he maybe stays. Dustin, you're absolutely right. It's a culmination of everything. But for me, the final straw is kind of the recruiting class and kicking the can on this recruiting class. Like, it's just inexplicable how you would just go, yeah, no, we're done.
It's arrogance. It's from a guy who didn't think he was gonna be fired. It's a guy who was willing to say on the record they had a fucking impossible buyout.
Yep.
Which is a bullshit thing to say. It's a bullshit thing to act like you're unfireable. Like, I get having job, and I think job security to some degree is good. I think this program got too used to the pushing the firing button as the solution to the problem. And usually patience, I think, is the right answer. But it's like you said at the top, Bobby, all the indicators were bad. The past indicators, this team hadn't consistently performed. You were coming off a season that it was a very disappointing 2022 season. You had a future NFL quarterback and one of the better rookie receivers. And I think that might even be underselling what Tank Dell is this year for the Texans. You had those 2 guys in your program, veteran guys who should have known the system inside and out, and guys who performed, I think, up to expectation, but the product was so bad around Clayton Tune and Tank Dell in a lot of ways. I think most notably your defense and this coach's handpicked defensive coordinator, Doug Belk, who failed pretty badly the last 2 years, but your past indicators are bad. Your present indicator, the current season, and I would say is bad. I would say another one of those is something we've talked about a lot already. The 2024 recruiting class only had 8 guys. And, Dana's talking at the UCF postgame about potentially 60 different guys in the program. It's like, where are you finding how are you going to find quality depth when you're talking about like a large portion of the roster getting turned over on an off season, or after an off season where you turned over almost half this current roster? So the present indicators are bad, and the future indicators, the recruiting, is bad. The desire of this coach to hold himself accountable. I think I mentioned in a previous pod, Sampson, after the close-ish win over Utah in the Charleston event, talking about how, I didn't get my guys ready, and he basically said it was his fault that the team didn't do better against some of Utah's sharpshooting bigger guys. When have you ever heard Dana Holgorsen take that kind of accountability in 5 years? A man who hasn't accomplished a fraction of what Kelvin Sampson did. So it was very clear to this fan base, and something that I said a fair amount when I think, because you've seen a lot of people take shots at U of H's attendance this year, is that these aren't fans staying home because of 2023 results. These are fans who were fed up about this coach already, who aren't seeing a reason to spend their hard-earned discretionary income and their time to go watch a football product that's not getting better, and a coach who is just adamant that everything is not his fault. There was no coming back from this. There was no way that Dana Holgorsen, like I said at the top, was ever going to get this fan base back on his side.
Yeah, and of all years to have fan apathy, this was not the year. This was the year you should have been able to sell out the tickets with no problem, and we did technically, right? But
there were 34,000 tickets sold for that Oklahoma State game. Dustin, were there 34,000 butts and seats in your opinion?
Right, and so you had the excitement from the fan base. You had everyone buying in. Everyone was super excited going into this year. And honestly, I think we all gave Dana a pass, kind of going, hey, look decent this year. Just look decent, and you're back next year. Like, we know we're moving into a harder conference. We know that a bowl is going to be the goal. And sometimes you fall short of the goal, and you don't always get fired when you fall short of the goal, right? We knew it was going to be tough. Yeah, we knew it was going to be tough going into the year. And I don't think anyone's expectations were super high. No one realistically thought we would go in and lose 2 conference games, right? It just, when he lost to Rice, it was kind of like, man, this may be it, right? Like, you're going to have to really show us something. And if you don't, like, you may have to go. And so for me, this year, all he had to do was look decent, and he didn't even look decent. He, going into the year, he was probably right. He did have a fucking impossible buyout. A lot of people would have gone, that's a lot of money for U of H to spend. That's not something we do a lot of. We didn't know that he would suck this bad, right? We didn't know this year would be this fucking bad. And so, was it kind of an impossible buyout? I thought it was. I said on the pod, and I said on our pod last week, our premium pod last week about this, that I thought we were going to give him the Scott Frost treatment. I thought he was going to have to bring in new coordinators. That buyout's huge. But I heard somebody, I can't remember who it was on Twitter, pointed out, well, you're going to pay him next year, and then you're going to fire him. You're still owing him the same amount of money. It's not like we get you're paying him the same amount whether you get rid of him now or whether you get rid of him after next year. The buyout goes down, but it's the $300,000 a month. It's the same thing no matter how you're doing it. So I thought that was a very interesting way to think about it. Is you're not saving money by paying it out next year.
I mean, I guess the money you save is the one less year of having to pay a different head coaching salary. But I think it's a good point that the buyout wasn't as daunting as many people, lead among them Dana Holgorsen, wanted everyone to believe that it was. And I think it's interesting. We talked before the year because I think we got I remember heading into this football season feels like a long time ago, even though it wasn't that long ago. I remember it just felt like every other day someone either tweeting at us or DMing us or wanting to like, hey, come on the pod and talk about what does Dana Holgorsen have to do in year one in the Big 12? What's a successful year? What's not? The Vegas line over under this year was 4.5. So we only missed our win total by a half of a game. But I think every time we got asked that question, our answer was some variety of, it depends. Like there's not one number, right? There's not one number of wins that's going to get you there. It's how does this team look over the course of the season, right? I think there's a 4-win season Dana Holgorsen could have had that he kept his job and came back next year.
Yeah, has a good recruiting class or something.
Yeah, but again, it's like y'all said, it's one in which you have some sort of decent recruiting class. It's one in which probably the Big 12 looked better as a whole conference than it did this year, where you didn't have the loss to Rice. You didn't have double-digit losses to both of the other teams that were joining the Big 12. A year in which, maybe Baylor has a really good season. You lose that game in Waco, but you win one of the two against Cincinnati or UCF, so you don't look like the clear third best out of 3 coming in from the American. Like you don't have quite as many. Maybe the TCU game is a close loss. Maybe the Texas Tech game is a close loss. I feel like you can tinker with some things in the margin here and get to the point where you go, okay, yeah, Dana comes back with a 4-8 record, but not a 4-8 record where you looked that, you talk about playing competitive football. We played way too much uncompetitive football this year. Even it's funny because a week ago we were roasting.
Such a wild thing to say also when you've been so uncompetitive. Sorry.
Right. No, it's funny because a week ago we were roasting him for being like, oh, well, it's about being competitive. Man, it's like I said, you could have come back at 4-8 if you had been more competitive, but you were a 4-8 where, I keep harping on it, but you were 2 plays away from being 2-10 in a underwhelming Big 12 with a loss to freaking Rice. So, yeah, not. I mean, it just and again, I think we were all group texting yesterday. We all had different numbers, but I think we all thought there was a less than 50% chance that they were going to make this move. We thought that the most likely outcome was Dana coming back next year. So, kudos to, excuse me, the U of H administration for making the move and knowing that they had to make the move, and looking forward to Houston taking this job to market.
And I think a really important factor here, it's not a U of H related thing, but it's the fact that Baylor today here on Sunday made it official that Dave Aranda will be back for a 5th season in Waco. This past season was his 4th season, because not saying that Baylor really, because that Baylor doesn't change your ability to what you're going to be able to pay a new coach, what you're going to be able to pay that new coach's assistants, what you're going to have to deal with in terms of Dan's buyout. The most important factors are and always will be within the University of Houston and the athletic supporters and on and on and on. But Baylor not going to market at the same time absolutely does make a difference here. It does. Mm-hmm. It does mean that you are not competing directly with them for the pool of candidates, which I think we're going to get to here in a little bit. But I think that's a really important external factor as well, because as much as we kind of feel a certain way about Baylor, and as much as they were an absolutely terrible, terrible, terrible football team this year, that is still a team that spent the last almost 30 years getting Big 12 money, getting Power 5 resources and everything that comes with it. it's an uncomfortable thought to have, but you wouldn't necessarily be able to win potentially a head-to-head with the candidates that we're going to talk about here a little bit out there. So I think that's an important thing to also mention as well. Yeah, I agree with everything you guys said. Yeah,
it feels like this is kind of fallen into place for us, right? Getting Traylor didn't. I know I'm talking candidates, but some of the bigger names didn't get jobs that you thought they might get, and now you almost have your pick of the guys in our area that are looking to step up that you might be interested in. We're going to talk about them later, but like you said, Sam, Baylor not firing Aranda is going to save us a decent amount of change.
Yeah, I was very surprised by that. Did not think that they were going to let us be the only other Texas school of a roughly similar profile to go to market.
Yeah, and I think it's exciting that Baylor's the job's not opening up, and it's exciting just regardless. I think to take this job to market as a Big 12 team. We haven't.
Yep.
We haven't got the University of Houston has not gotten to hire a coach to a power conference. Since we went from Jenkins to Helton as a member of the Southwest Conference back in the 90s. So this is the first time since then that we've gotten to really see, hey, who is going to be interested in the University of Houston as a job in a power conference, and that's part of the excitement of joining this conference was figuring out what our ceiling is in all of our various sports. Football included, and I think part of figuring out what that ceiling is finding out how attractive this job is. We've over the years, for years and years, honestly, literally seen the speculation of people, even people not affiliated with U of H, long saying that when this job opens up in a power conference, there's going to be a huge long line of candidates. Well, let's see. As much as we've got a number of guys that we're going to talk about here, but is it going to be any? I mean, honestly, I'd be fine with kind of any of them, but. Is it them? Is it someone else? Do you have I don't want to, again, you don't want to force that to compare everyone to Kelvin Sampson, but I remember when we hired Kelvin Sampson, we had a list of candidates we were kind of thinking about, and then they pulled one where you go, oh, I wasn't even thinking about him. Of course, is there one of those in the wings waiting where you go, oh my gosh, I hadn't even thought that this person was considering it. So hard to know yet what it's going to be, but and it's a little bit scary as well because since he was the first of the new teams in the Big 12 from the Americans to go to market with their Big 12 job, and they're also in a pretty fertile recruiting ground. I wouldn't say it's completely equal to Houston, but Ohio is also, there's a ton of talent there as well. And they're not exactly thrilled with their choice after a year. So if you make the wrong choice, you're giving this guy probably 3 or 4 years to.
Yeah, you still got to choose him.
Yeah,
everyone can apply for the job. Every coach ever can apply for the job. You still got to choose the right one for Houston.
Exactly. So, you make the wrong choice, all of a sudden you're the next 3 or 4 years, you're watching some guy who's not the right answer. So, and spoiler alert, even if it's a great choice, we're probably going to find things about the new guy that we don't love. So it's that whole moment of, not knowing who your coach is yet. And just getting this it's the excitement. It is that. It could be anything. It could be a boat. It could be, a complete dud that's not doing any better than the last guy. So it's scary and exciting moment for sure, especially with it being, like I said, the first time with this job coming open in the Big 12.
Yeah, and I would only say to I guess kind of my final thought on certainly not my last ever thought on Dana Holgorsen. I'd love for that to be the case. I'd love to be able to do the Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind thing and just mind wipe the majority bad memories of the last 5 seasons of Cougar football. But I would just say, get behind the next guy, even if it's not your preferred candidate. If you want this team to be a winning Big 12 team, but you were staying away because you didn't understand for understandable reasons, like because you didn't like Dana, didn't think Dana was the guy, fine, whatever, it's in the past now. Support this next guy. Like your butt in the seat, your donation, your season ticket is going to help this be the best Big 12 program it could be. You don't have to be a club level sweet kind of donor to make a positive difference for this team. Don't just, like, if it's halfway through the first season, this coach is dealing with first season things, be like, well, I got better things to do. Call me when this is a 10-win team. And I realize I'm probably not speaking to people listening to a Houston podcast, so I'm not going to belabor the point. Well, people do that a lot. They just
for sure.
They love like going after the people who are the most engaged fans. Why aren't there more butts in seats? I don't know, buddy. If I could get U of H guaranteed 36,000 asses in seats each week, and I'd be getting a highly paid, I assume getting a high salary from the University of Houston because I've somehow worked something that they haven't been able to do as consistently over the history. So, but that's just my thing. If this coach doesn't have the greatest first season, this coach could be the coach that gets this team over the hump. But if you just check out on them after us winning 4 or 5 games next season, it's going to make it harder for that to happen. So I've asked this fan base that has been clamoring to get rid of this coach for, I think, nearly all valid reasons, to get behind the next guy, because that's what's going to help us get the next step here. All right, I'm done cheerleading. I'm off my soapbox. Dustin, you want to lead us through the thorny woods of candidates, unless you have something else, Bobby, you want to add?
All I was going to say is to just kind of reiterate your point and just kind of ask you guys, new guy, whoever he is he going into a true year zero situation here? Do you feel like 4 years is it, you got to give him the 4 years?
I would say 4 years, unless the recruiting and off-field indicators are really bad. Yes. There's always going to be a situation where it's like,
I'm not saying I disagree. I was just asking the question because I think
that's mine. That's mine, Dustin. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have again, I think it comes out of the same thing. It depends on how it looks, right? I'm not going to say 4 years and then, a guy could have the worst 3 years imaginable and we could be okay. Well, it's clear things aren't going right here. So I like I said, I think the best way to look at it is as though next year is year zero, and we're not even going to really start evaluating the job that he's doing probably until 2025 is probably the way that I would conceptualize it, and we could just go from there.
Yep.
How about you, Bobby?
Yeah, I think like Dustin said, there are exceptions to the rule, but I definitely think the damage has kind of been done with this program. And if you give a guy 3 years, a lot of times that last recruiting class that he kind of saves is his first one, and he can make it, a decent amount, but this guy's coming into 8 recruits and he's just going to have to be looking for portal guys the whole time. He may be coming into a decent situation for next year, right? Where, like I said earlier, he's got that returning offensive talent, but the foundation just isn't laid right now with this recruiting class, how the portal looks for this team right now. You're going to lose a lot of guys to the portal with Hol-GONE-sen leaving. So it's, I don't know if the foundation to build a strong house is here in year one. So it's tough for me to say that, oh yeah, you get 3 years and figure it out. I don't like that.
I think we all agree the power people should skew to patience here, because again, if there's grains of truth, and I think that Dana not being the coach here is good. I think that's breaking news here. I think we all agree on that. I think he did say some hard truths to us about the level of resourcing and stuff like that. Were they hard truths backed up with any obvious coaching acumen in the years of the last couple? No, but they were some hard truths I think we needed to hear, that at the start of his tenure, the roster wasn't old enough, that
some Tom Penders-esque hard truths, right?
Yeah. Although honestly, Tom Penders squeezed a lot more juice out of it. Again, very funny as me as a avowed Tom Penders hater, but certainly with hindsight, like obviously like what Tom was getting resourced at U of H. Like, okay, yeah, I sort of get why he wasn't able to get any local kids here. And he did like at least raise the floor a bit, which I think is probably the job of the next guy, honestly, is to raise the floor, but have this be a more respectable looking product.
You got to win a conference title like Penders did.
I don't know about that one, but I don't know about
Penders has a conference title, baby. I was there.
And an NCAA tournament bid, yeah.
All right. Well, I think we'll go ahead and jump into some of the possible replacement candidates that have been floated out there. I literally I tried to be a completionist, and I found 10 names that I've seen linked at least semi-credibly to the U of H job in the hours kind of preceding and following Dana's firing. So I've grouped them into 3 categories, but I'm just going to run down them 1 through 10. So we'll just talk about each category individually and who are kind of the names that we like that fall within those categories. And the first one, I have it first because I have the most names. I have 4 of my 10 in here, and also because I think probably 2 of the names that are getting most of the run are in this category. That is head coaches of local-ish G5 programs. The 4 names that I've seen that fall into this category are Willie Fritz from Tulane, Jeff Traylor, UTSA, GJ Kinney, Texas State, and John Sumrall, Troy. Sam, who within this list, who do you like? Who's your pick? If we're going for a G5 head coach, who do you like?
I would say Jeff Traylor. I think out of that group, he's my pick. Like GJ Kinney intrigues me so much though, because you saw it, Dustin, when you lived with me in San Marcos, the apathy around that Texas State program to immediately get out of the box there with a mostly new roster and win 7 games. I would understand why if you're U of H, you don't want to pull the trigger on a guy who has a total of like 2 seasons as a head coach, one at the FCS level at Incarnate Word and one just done now at Texas State. But I think that's a guy, a really interesting guy long term, but I don't know if he's I don't know if he has the resume yet to be the guy here at U of H. With Traylor, I feel like he checks all the boxes. A really successful high school coach, previously at Gilmer, won, I believe, 4 state titles, the 4A level there, has worked as an assistant in this footprint at the Cal College in Austin, also in Arkansas and SMU as well, and took a program that, I don't want to age any of us here, but our friendship is several years older than the UTSA football program. Not the UTSA football program's Division I history. The UTSA football program period is several years younger than the three of us, having the wonderful friendship we've shared these last 16-ish years. That, I just, that he's able to win there consistently. I realize like a decent amount of that is guys who he inherited. Frank Harris, I think, chief among them, but also previously Sincere McCormick. The receivers he's had, there's Akari Franklin and Josh Cephas as well. He inherited good pieces, but he got so much more of that program than anyone prior. A program with very little Division I history, was able to really excite that fan base. And I know, again, I do find it a red flag that he lost 2 games to University of Houston these last 2 years. I would not dispute anyone who's like, hey man, I'm not sure about this guy based on that. I would just say, one, as fun as it was, the game in San Antonio last season was, I think U of H had like an 8% win expectancy at the end of that, which, I mean, it doesn't take one iota away from the win, but a lot of crazy stuff happened in that one. Frank Harris was obviously not healthy at the beginning of this season, which again doesn't take away from that being one of U of H's 4 wins this year, but they were obviously a very different team in November than they were in September, and that he was able to take that team out of a 1-3 slide to, as of this past weekend, still being in the AAC championship picture in their first year in the league, I think it's pretty damn impressive. He immediately gives you credibility in high school recruiting. That's my short pitch for Jeff Traylor, who's my favorite out of that group.
Yeah, I think my only qualms with Jeff Traylor is just kind of like, is what he's doing sustainable after their very like senior heavy class, like graduates this year with everybody? Is that still a sustainable program, or did he kind of get one class together and ride it to this job? And like I said, I don't know that it's disqualifying to me that he lost to Dana Holgorsen each of the last 2 years. It's bad optics at the very least.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't look great to hire a guy that lost.
Hey guys, do we have the coach for you?
Yeah, so I don't know. So we'll see. Again, he's someone I could very easily get on board with for all the reasons you said, Sam. I think there are some maybe slightly red flags there, though. Bobby, thoughts on Jeff Traylor and who your pick for a G5 head coach would be if we go that route?
Yeah, I have the same concerns with Jeff Traylor that pretty much everyone else has already said. I worry how the team, lost their quarterback and they started to not look very good. And then when he came back, they started to look pretty good again, right? And so for me, that just feels like Jimbo Fisher writing a national title off the back of Jameis Winston to the A&M job.
Tom Herman getting the UT job with Greg Ward.
Honestly. Yeah. And so it just has that kind of vibe to me. Like, is he a good coach, or is he, or did, like you said, Dustin, he recruit really well one year? But here's the thing. I'm okay if you recruit really well one year. Like, that's fine. If you do this, cool. You give me the UTSA of the Big 12. I'm taking it, right? 2 really good years. Took you a little bit of time when your quarterback goes down and stuff like. It's still fun football to watch, right? But Traylor, that's my concern, and why I have Willie Fritz ahead of him. And really, to be honest with you guys, I'm 100% on board with Willie Fritz. There isn't, and I'll just spoil the rest of it. There isn't another candidate you're going to name that I like more than Willie Fritz. He wins everywhere he goes. Where hasn't he won? He wins everywhere, right? No matter the level, he wins, and I like it. So I'm going to bring him here on that. That's like the number one reason. But 2, you got a guy who's a local guy who like has recruited the area before. Tulane's coming in. Tulane, he's coming from Tulane. Tulane recruits a lot of our area, can recruit Mississippi. He's shown he's a good recruiter. He's shown he can win at a situation that may not be the best, right? No, when he took over Tulane, no one was like, what a great job to take. Like, it was a job in the American. It was a pretty good job, right? Better than most G5s. And he just taken them, flipped them, and made them pretty good over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think Willie Fritz is probably my number one pick too, honestly, for kind of the same reason. Of all the coaches who are, I think, still on the upward trajectory of the coaches that we're going to name on this list, he's the one who is currently winning at the highest level. Houston 8. Houston got an 8. See, that is
wow.
obscene.
Wow.
Iowa State got a 7 even. That's very upsetting. So Houston will be facing UC Santa Barbara in the first round. If they win, would face Stanford again in the NCAA tournament for the second year in a row. So that's disappointing.
Stanford is a rough second round matchup. That is we got to see that close and personal. That was a really, really good team last year.
Yep. Yeah, that's tough.
That's upsetting.
Yeah.
Disappointing for the team. Hope to see them do well in the first round, and obviously would love to see them give Stanford a game. But man, we're definitely hoping to not have to face a team that quality until the second.
Hoping Fresno State has a little bit of last year's Auburn in them too. Because I mean, you've pointed out, Dustin, like, not to say last year's team didn't deserve to be in the Sweet 16. It wasn't one of the best 25-inch volleyball teams in the country last year, but did get a nice little boost of Auburn eliminating last year's host Creighton last year.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right,
Willie Fritz.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he's winning at the closest thing to the P5 level you can get without actually being at the P5, and he's like you said, like Bobby said, he's won at every level up until this point. The only knock I think you can really have on him is that he's 63, but he still seems to be at the height of his abilities and trending upwards. I think he has several years left if that's what he wants to do for a while. So, Jeff Traylor, I think it's absolutely right to compliment him on taking over essentially, like Sam said, a brand new program and winning there. Willie Fritz didn't do that, but man, he took over a program that it's not a brand new, but it's a program that has a long history of losing, which I don't know if that's better or harder or easier, but it's probably pretty similar to
certainly similar. Yeah. No, I would say, and just quick for the people at home who aren't familiar, like, okay, vaguely he's the guy at Tulane. I remember facing him several years there, but before he was at Tulane, he was at Georgia Southern for 2 years, where he led their transition from FCS, the level below this one, to FBS. Went 8-0 against the Sun Belt his first year, though, won, I believe, 17 or 18 games in the 2 years he was there. Before that, he was at Sam Houston, took them to the FCS playoffs 3 of the 4 years there. 2 of those years, he took the Bearcats with a K to a national championship game, lost to the just juggernaut that is North Dakota State, but was, to that point, the best coach in Sam Houston history. I think it's probably been surpassed by his successor, Casey Keeler, who won Natty in the spring of 2021 season, but also he left Casey Keeler a much better program than he got when he took over. So I would say Willie Fritz is a good case there. Before that was won almost 100 games at Central Missouri, just built them into a consistent winner, I believe is their program's winningest ever head coach. Coached JUCO ball at Blinn previously as well. A guy who's coached at almost literally every level but this one, has won at a level at Tulane that is completely unprecedented, certainly in the modern era, maybe ever, for Green Wave football, but certainly the last 50 years. I think the first ever to take them to back-to-back double-digit win seasons. I think they're 22 and 4 or something like that the last years, which it's Tulane, guys. Like, we remember Tulane just being like a team that was just like, oh, cool, it's a fun road trip every other year and an easy win at home, like during the CUSA and early American days. And to turn from that to not just a pesky 6-7 win team, which I think is what he did before this stage, but to turn him from that to a consistent contender in the best group of 5 league, I think nothing short of amazing. I think the only knock, and it's not even really a knock on him personally, it's the timing, guys. I know Bobby's gonna be like, fuck the timing, just bring him in whenever, but the timing really matters here, because Georgia Tech almost hired this guy last year, and he rightfully told them, hey, I'm not going to jump before the American Championship game. I'm not going to jump before the New Year's Six Bowl yet, and had a chance to do what he did there and beat USC in the Cotton Bowl, which I would say, if it's not the greatest ever Tulane win, it is one of the best 2 or 3 ever, because I just don't know their pre-1960s history. But and he's not, and I love the University of Houston, but if U of H is no, we need a decision now, we're not such a good job that he's going to be like, all right, I'm bailing. If, and I think Tulane's a pretty good sized favorite against SMU in the American Championship game, because SMU is without their starting quarterback. So if they win the American and he's like, I got coach this team till January, I'm sorry, guys, the timing just doesn't work out here. You cannot, in this current era, not have a coach on board coaching for you until January. And I don't blame Willie Fritz at all for doing that, because he's compensated nicely. He is going to probably get himself a statue built at Tulane. He has the leverage here, but I think he would be, for all the reasons you guys said, just an unbelievable home run hire.
Yeah. A couple of other guys, like I said, we mentioned GJ Kinney, Texas State, done a really remarkable job there. But man, just you talk about the opposite of Willie Fritz being the guy that's gotten the closest, just hasn't really, other than 1 year as an analyst at Arkansas back in 2018, just no experience at the P5 level. Like I said, you could kind of say the same about Fritz, but at least Fritz is winning in the next biggest, next best thing in the AAC, has a longer track record. So I kind of see Kinney as like a higher risk, higher reward, younger version of Fritz, maybe. And then John Summerall, probably someone who I would be a little surprised if that's the pick. I saw a lot of people kind of saying he'd be the slam dunk for Kentucky when they thought that A&M was going to hire Mark Stoops away from them. But has been a defensive assistant in the SEC for several years, which you kind of associate that with being synonymous with you're probably a good recruiting guy if a bunch of SEC teams are hiring you. And then took over as the head coach at Troy 2 years ago and has gone 22-4 as a head coach at Troy. So not bad at all. Again, a lot of time in SEC country, maybe he holds out for an SEC job, has no real ties to Texas that I can see, but certainly someone who's been real successful and is local enough that, wouldn't be mad about that hire if that's the way they go.
I just want to say I refuse to support GJ Kinney because I watched him torch my Houston Cougars too much. And if you played when I was in college, you're too young. Like, I'm not saying I'm young, but it'll make me feel terrible just about where I am. So if we could just avoid that, like 5 more years, like the next coach can be from when I was in college. But like, I can't have watched you beat my team and then be like, and like yelled at you while you were doing it and then be like, yeah, I like you coaching my team. I don't like that, man. I don't like it.
I could look past it. Let him. Yeah. If he's the best guy and U of H's decision makers are like, this is the guy, my old ass will watch him and be fine with it.
I want you to understand.
I get it,
Bobby.
I do.
Like lose my mind. But that's why I'm saying no to GJ Kinney right away. I need an old guy coaching my team. And I know soon I will be the old guy. Bad news for you, Bobby. I need an old guy to coach the team, please.
Here's how recently GJ Kinney was playing college football. When the year after GJ Kinney graduated, the American Athletic Conference preseason poll came out, and I was doing some blog at the time, and I did a little blog blurb on the preseason poll coming out, and Houston was ahead of Tulsa. And I'm pretty sure they had beaten us this last year on campus. And so, or maybe I'm thinking, but
wasn't his last year the 2011 season finale?
Maybe,
I think so. Keep talking. I will look this up.
Story not important. Point being,
not important. Story.
But I just did a little blurb on the article, and GJ Kinney's grandfather comments and is just like, "Oh, I can't believe they have Houston. I can't believe you have Houston." So, and I just responded and was like, "Well, I didn't have Houston out of Tulsa. Like, I'm commenting on someone else doing it." And also, if anyone has Houston ahead of Tulsa, surely it's only because Tulsa's quarterback won't be as good next year. And I was like giving him bait, trying to.
And then Cody Green just absolutely just fucking destroyed us.
He ignored me and never responded. So good times all around.
His last year in college was 2011, which, as you point out, Dustin, not at all relevant to the story, but we're just the kind of psychos that have to look that up.
Good times. All right, so category number 2 that I've got here is bounce back head coaches. This is also guys that have been head coaches but aren't. Well, I guess one of them is currently a head coach also, but is not necessarily on the current upward trajectory. Maybe we're looking to bounce back. So the 3 guys that I've got in this category, and you can tell me if you like any of these names at all, because I feel like all 3 of these guys. Maybe you like one of them, but probably at least one you're going to be like, God, no, that's the one name on this list that I refuse to support. So here are the 3 names that I have in this category: Cliff Kingsbury, Gary Patterson, Barry Odom. Bobby, who do you like? Who do you not like?
Oof, man. So I have been, Sam and I have talked this. We've workshopped this one.
I know who you're about to talk about. Yep.
It's Gary Patterson. And to be honest, the more I think about Gary Patterson, the less I want him to come here. So he's an older guy who showed no ability to adjust his offense. Everyone remembers those really, really good TCU teams, like the really, really good ones. But man, those last 4 or 5 years at TCU, they were not good. They were 4-win teams. They were 5-win teams. It clearly looked like he had been passed by a little bit. Now, I know he's done a lot of I'm blanking on the word, not consultation, but an analyst. He's done a lot
he was like a senior off-field guy. I think he was something higher than an analyst, but not an on-field coach for Sarkisian last year at Texas. Yeah.
And so maybe he's been around some offense that will change his mind and innovate a little bit, but just you're going to have to pay him a decent amount, I think. And that's just, you don't have to pay a buyout to Fritz or Traylor or somebody like that, but he just doesn't, he he doesn't excite me like he does some other people. He's a really good name, and it's going to be that's a name that'll dominate sports radio down in Houston. It'll get on 610, it'll get on 790, and people will be talking about it. But I don't think it's necessarily the best case for U of H.
I would say he is not my first choice. I think Gary Patterson is a somewhat better candidate than you were giving him credit for. Yes, didn't go as well the last 4 or 5 years there. I think just it's a hire. It's going to be a more affordable hire because you're not having to pay whatever Tulane and UTSA's buyouts are. It's a guy with a ton of Big 12 experience, coaching the Big 12 over a decade, in addition to the decade prior when TCU was a very, very successful group of 5 program, or non-BCS, whatever you would call it, from that era. I think the important question is for me, because he was a guy when he left or was pushed out, or whatever you want to say about his end to the time at TCU. It's a guy who didn't sound very thrilled about the current level of player agency, NIL, and all that stuff. And like it or lump it, you have to be pro this to succeed at U of H. You have to be all in on NIL. You have to be somebody who's not working as an impediment there, which I don't think Dana was, to be clear. But you can't be an impediment there. I think my other question would be, what's he going to do offensively? And TCU wasn't Iowa. TCU had good offensive teams under Patterson, but wasn't consistent. I would say if you wanted to point to that program's downfall and just backslide, it wasn't consistent enough. But they still, I will point out, even as the results got less consistently good, they were still recruiting at a high level. That was still a super talented roster that Sonny Dykes got there. So this is a guy who certainly, I think, will raise the recruiting ceiling here. It's somebody who might actually give us a half decent defense to look at some point. I was doing the points per game of the last 10 years, and just like, we really got spoiled, guys, from about 2013 to I think right before the 2018 season, of like good defenses, because it's mostly fallen off a fucking cliff here, with the 2021 season being a nice little exception against a not so great strength of schedule in the middle there. I think he would do that. But again, we'll say what I say at the top. Gary Patterson's not my first choice here, but I think I'd like it a bit more than Bobby if that ends up being the guy here. I think there are definitely some pros I think in his favor.
I think the best argument in favor of Gary Patterson is that he went and spent a year with the Longhorns program this past year. You know, if Gary Patterson had went and spent the past year being like a TV studio analyst, I think I would be really, really hesitant. Whereas, like, I think it would be relatively easy for him to, like, I feel like by the end of the press conference, I could be fully on board with the hire. If, kind of like you said, Sam, he's saying the right things about, you know, okay, hey, I've gone to a place where they're definitely doing NIL stuff, and I've seen that's the thing I need to do. I've went to a place where, hey, they're throwing the ball around the park and they have an exciting offense, and you know, and I've realized I need to find a young exciting mind, because I very well believe that if he's inclined to do so, that Gary Patterson could find an innovative, exciting offensive mind to come in and essentially hand over the offense to, and worry probably more about the defense as more his you know, emphasize specialty side of the ball there. So, you know, I agree, like, kind of like Bobby said, I think the end of his tenure at TCU, it looked like modern football was evolving away from him somewhat. But like I said, I believe that he's got some rabbits still in his hat, some tricks to up his, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. It's I could be talked into it, but I would have to be talked into it is probably the best way to put it. Cleve Kingsbury, I'm intrigued. I don't, Sam, I saw you kind of talking this one on Twitter, and I don't even have like a coherent argument for why.
I love the offense, to be clear. I love the offense. That 2011 offense was just my platonic ideal of a Cougar offense. But yeah, I think you'll get into why there are issues with this.
Right. So he's someone who interestingly started his career at U of H as an assistant, was famously the head coach of Texas Tech from 2013 to 2018, parlayed that into a head coaching job with the Arizona Cardinals, despite not having won all that many games at Texas Tech. Ended up not winning all that many games with the Arizona Cardinals either, and got fired this past season. Was the quarterback's coach at USC, I believe, this past season. So, you know, he's someone who's got name recognition. He's someone who I think could recruit well to the University of Houston. He's someone who, just in terms of being relevant and being a name that people want to talk about and making Houston more newsworthy and interesting, if that is something that matters at all, he'll have that in his quarter. But, you know, coming off of 2 head coaching jobs where he was under 500 at both head coaching jobs is not super exciting. I've been trying to like put my finger on why I would kind of be okay with it. And I think it is just that, like, literally 2 seasons ago, the dude was the head coach of a playoff NFL team, and it just went, that's not nothing, I guess. And it just, I think you've seen a non-zero number of times that a guy is a flawed college coach, ends up going to the NBA either as an assistant or a head coach, and then kind of just it's such a masterclass that when he comes back that he looks better as a head coach than he did before. And it's even, again, not to keep bringing this guy up and making everyone like damned with the comparison, but like even Kelvin Sampson, I think was clearly someone who went to the pros and then came back and was better for it. So I think that there's something there. I think the offense could be fun. Again, I think it's kind of the inverse of Patterson, where he'd have to come in and be like, all right, like, I'm going to be the face of the program. I'm going to be the offense, and I'm going to, I have the name and NFL recognition that I can attract a defensive coordinator that I can just wholly turn that side of the ball over to and stand back, I guess.
Yeah, I wouldn't look. I don't think Cliff's going to happen, and I would be excited though, like you guys said, if Cliff came on board. It would be intriguing whether it's the offense, the defense. Let's just see what's going to happen. Like we can admit that's fun. That's exciting to just be like, I don't know. It's a risk. And if it hits, it's going to be awesome. If it doesn't, we're no worse off than we are now. Right. Like it feels like if it hits, it's going to be so much fun. And if it doesn't, we're just going to be like, we probably should have saw that one coming. Right. Like it's kind of like, well, we did it to ourselves at the end of the day. That was fun, but I'm out.
I will say, if this is going to be a 4-7 win kind of team, that'll be a more fun brand of 4-7 win football than I think what we're in currently. So I'll give him that. And I think my concern, and people can change their minds, I'm not going to hold this against Cliff, but Cliff has been very vocal of just like, I don't know if I want to be a college head coach again. Just given it's a lot of, you're supervising 100-ish 18 to 23-year-olds. And there's a lot of just annoying non-football coach stuff that goes with that. And I think his general point there was just like, I enjoy the ball coaching aspects of this. And frankly, coaching ball is like way down the list of responsibilities if you're going to be a CEO of the program. But I think that'll be a fun offense. I will say, I don't think he's going to get the job. Barry Odom is an intriguing guy. I could say as somebody currently sitting about 4.5 miles from the Raiders Stadium right now, that guy is probably responsible for UNLV's best season as a Division 1A / FBS team in program history. Like, I think this team set the wins mark against an FCS team from like the early 80s who had to forfeit all their games for less stringent academic requirements than the NCAA requires their football teams. Suge Knight was on that team. Little fun. Suge Knight and Randall Cunningham. But I think a guy who I think Missouri eventually did get sick of him there. But like, and yeah, Missouri's having a good year this year, but it's a place that's shown like it's a tough place to win the SEC. I won't hold that necessarily against him. He's recruited Texas, both from his time at Missouri, also Arkansas's defensive coordinator immediately prior to taking over at UNLV. And I think they have a few Texas commits as well. So a guy who I think is qualified would be interesting, but I don't think we'll be getting the job. I think if it's going to be any of the guys from this group, it's going to be Patterson or Cliff, even though I don't think Cliff is a hugely likely candidate.
I'm surprised you talked that long about Barry Odom, Sam, without mentioning that I think the biggest appeal of Barry Odom as the potential hire here would be if he could bring Brennan Marion with him.
I knew one of y'all would mention Brennan Marion.
Coordinator, because that go-go offense that they've got is just a lot of fun.
So much fun.
It really is.
Yeah.
It started a redshirt freshman who came in, I think, third on the depth chart during fall camp into the most likely Mountain West freshman of the year. Sorry.
Yeah, no. That was pretty much, just like the offense has been fun. Brennan Marion, if he could come with, would be a lot of fun. And kind of echo what you said, the job at Missouri is kind of like, okay, it is a little bit like Dana-esque, where it's like, hey, maybe the fan base should have been a little bit more appreciative of what the level that he was winning at in the conference he was at. But also, like, I also see why the fan base was tired of the results. So, I think the best argument is maybe that he's kind of reinventing himself over there at UNLV and doing some good things. Because, like I said, some coaches have second acts, and a lot of times the way you do that is by finding exciting young assistants with new ideas. And it sure seems like he's done that in Brennan Marion as the offensive coordinator there.
Yeah. And our previous coach loved to do that too. You could really see him doing that. So is that why he's going?
Is that the sarcasm I've always been hearing kids do?
You've always been fond of. No, on Barry Odom, I agree with everything you guys have said, especially the fan base kind of should have just been like, well, it's not bad. It's not great.
I mean, they just won 10 games under his successor. So, maybe it was time. Also was a good defensive coordinator at previous stops as well.
Yeah. So, it's probably unlikely. I don't think any of us are thinking that it's going to happen. But like you said, he has recruited Texas before. If you're in the SEC, you're recruiting Texas or Florida, and if you're in Arkansas and Missouri, you're probably recruiting Texas.
All right, and then the final category of coaches, we talked about G5 head coaches, we talked about Bounceback head coaches. So our final category is assistants current assistants who could be in line for their first head coaching gig at U of H. I've got 3 names that I've seen thrown out in regard to this opening. I'll give their brief, quick little resumes too, just since less so household names than the guys we've mentioned up until this point, probably. And you guys can let me know if you've seen anyone else that you like or have seen thrown out for this job. Jeff Banks, a name that I've seen a couple of guys in the national media throw out, has been a special teams coordinator / tight ends coach, most recently for the Longhorns, previously the same job at Alabama, and before that Texas A&M. So, a lot of high level programs, if nothing else, sure seem to like him as a recruiter. Sure seems like, some of the highest recruiting programs in the country are giving him, important recruiting jobs. And then Will Stein, a young up and comer at a absolutely obscene 34 years old. But his star seems to be rising. Was at UTSA for 3 years, 2 as the passing game coordinator, 1 as co-offensive coordinator, then moved this last year to Oregon. They are scoring a ton of points and winning a ton of games with him running the offense this year. And then Garrett Riley, the offensive coordinator at Clemson this year, held the same job at TCU the last year, SMU a couple of years prior to that. Sam, is there an assistant that you like, or one that I've not mentioned that you think is worth mentioning here?
No, I think you have the 3 I've mentioned. I like Will Stein from Oregon a lot. Again, very young guy, like you said, Dustin, to have, because I think GJ Kinney is a few months younger than you, but Will Stein is for sure younger than yours truly, which might make me temporarily feel a certain kind of way. But started as a Texas high school football coach, was on Trailers first staff at UTSA, so was a part of the build there. Didn't just parachute in for one season to have a good offense. Was a part of their build on that roster, a part of a Texas program. I think his job at Oregon is the first time that he's coached outside the state of Texas. So somebody, I don't think you have Jeff Traylor's level of ties, but somebody who would immediately give you credibility with the state's high school coaches, would give you a more fun offense than what Dana's delivered the last several years, because that's what this fan base wants more than anything, is just fun offense. We've all, whatever era you've come in on Cougar football, the Yeoman Veer, the run and shoot years, the Briles and Sumlin years, you probably came in while U of H was running an exciting, high-powered, innovative offense. And I think Will Stein would give you that. And I think that's why he's my favorite hire. I think U of H is fixated on getting somebody who's coming in either as a sitting head coach or recently former sitting head coach here. So I don't think any of these guys will be the candidates, but I think Will Stein, in the chance that it happens, I think would be a great hire. I think somebody is going to make Will Stein a head coach sooner than later, and he's going to do quite well there. And certainly I think deliver on the exciting offense aspect as well.
Yeah, I would probably go with Will Stein as well, but Garrett Riley's pretty exciting too. He's led some really, really good offenses. I mean, OC at TCU last year, and being TCU Clemson's coordinator this year, their offenses look pretty good. Not the most not like they've had recently, but SMU good offense, TCU good offense. And he's just kind of worked at other places that have really good offenses, and he's got ties to the area. I'm big on the recruiting side of this new coach, right? Especially coming in with 8 recruits committed.
Interesting. First I'm hearing of this.
You're gonna need to do some work here and recruit. And so I think he's shown he can do that in Texas as well. So while I agree with Sam that I like Will Stein a little bit more, I gotta say Garrett Riley wouldn't make me terribly disappointed.
Yeah, I think Stein's probably my choice out of these 3 as well, even though, man, anyone you bring in at 34 just feels like an awfully big game.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm kind of weirdly intrigued by the Jeff Banks thing, just because it sure seems like everyone that talks about him is just like, oh man, this guy would just like recruit like crazy if you gave him that job, which is obviously really tantalizing. But I don't know, it's a little dangerously like Tony Levine-esque, right? To be like, we're gonna bring in a guy who's been a special teams coordinator and like. Yep. And essentially, have him be kind of the CEO of the program. It's like, oh, we tried that not too long ago.
Yeah.
But I think it very much says something that, like I said, A&M, Alabama, UT Austin
Yeah.
all want this guy to be a big part of what they're doing recruiting wise. I think that's not nothing. It's a name I could get behind. Will Stein, definitely a name I could get behind. Garrett Riley, I don't know. Like when you guys talk about like, coaches, quarterback surfing.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like maybe he's been doing that,
Yeah.
Mordecai at SMU and Duggan at TCU. I mean, Clemson's like what I checked today, 51 in offensive SP plus. So not exactly lighting the world on fire with the Tigers this year, offensively. So, and again, like
I think that's fair.
Yeah, not a hugely impressive resume. I don't know. I kind of feel like if he wasn't the younger brother of Lincoln Riley, maybe we wouldn't be talking about him as much. Maybe he wouldn't be on the upward trajectory that he is. I threw out 10 names. I think he might be my 10 out of 10. But here's the thing, guys. You know what? All 10 of the candidates that I threw out there have in common.
They're not Dana Holgorsen.
They're not Dana Holgorsen, and I would prefer any of them to Dana Holgorsen. Like we talked at the top about like, support the guy, whoever. There is like not that much distance between my 1 and 10. Like my 1 and 10 are probably respectively Willie Fritz and Garrett Riley, and there is not that much difference between how I feel about the two of them and how excited I would be for either of them to come in as the head coach. So we talked about Baylor not opening being a good thing, but on the other hand, there's like, I don't know, there's a bunch of guys that they could bring in that I go, yep, makes sense. I can get on board with that.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's anyone on this list that I would go, oh my gosh, I'm just over the moon. Maybe there is that like ace in the hole that they had someone all along, that they're going to shock everyone by, oh, I didn't realize that guy was in play. But man, it feels like you're throwing at a dartboard with a whole lot of correct answers.
I think that's a good way to end it, guys, unless you have anything else.
Nope. Sounds good. We're going to do we didn't do our usual intro. We're doing our usual outro, or are we just going neither because it's a special bonus emergency pod?
shpodcast@gmail.com, shpawdcast on Twitter /SSX. See, my body was rejecting even saying the other name of Twitter. It just wouldn't let me do it. It's like the Fonz was saying he's wrong. It's not capable. Podcast.bsky.social. Did I get that right, Dustin?
Yes.
On Blue Sky as well. Anywhere you get podcasts, please rate us 5 stars. That is free 99 to do, and it does genuinely help us. I realize you hear probably a lot of podcasts say that, but no bullshit. That helps us a whole lot. So thanks to those of you that listened all the way to the end. And Dustin, what do we always say to close it out?
Go Cougs.